Hello and welcome to another video by 1960s and 70s Chronicles of a Golden Era. This one is going to be talking about venues, gig venues, and I'll be describing some of the venues that I've been to and making mention of venues that I haven't attended but are worthy of a mention in the context of being great venues in the Golden Era and right up to date for the ones that are still open. And that's part of the problem. A lot of these venues are not open anymore. And I'm going to be asking you to just leave comments about the best venues you attended and your memories from them. Now, on the Chronicles Facebook page, I have several times written articles and made mention of the Glasgow Apollo Theatre, which up until 1970 or 71 was known as the Greens Playhouse, but it's the same building. And that building, best known to me as the Apollo Theatre, was well recognised as the greatest gig in Britain during the Golden Era. Now, mind you, the greatest gig, but not the greatest venue by any means. The old-fashioned term flea pit fits the Apollo very well, and even then doesn't really go far enough in describing what is meant by that. It was a ramshackle, dilapidated building inside and out, but it was the crowd that made it the greatest gig, not the greatest venue, the greatest gig in Britain. Well recognised. I think the best description I remember from the British music paper, I can't remember which one, the British Music Press, which was reviewing all the best gigs, the best venues in Britain. And the Apollo, straight up, the best gig in Britain. It's declared that right from the start, although it went on to describe how the venue itself was not great. And it described the gig, or playing a gig at the Apollo, as something that, if the atmosphere could be bottled and sold, anyone who could do that would make a fortune, because it was the atmosphere generated by the crowd that made the Glasgow Apollo gig the greatest gig in Britain. Not the venue by any means. Like I say, tumbled down. Not the most hygienic place. You want to spend a few hours in the company of even yourself, actually. Far less in the company of several thousand other people. But it was the gig. It was the atmosphere that made it a great gig, not a great venue. So it was the Glasgow Apollo. I am going to mention Earl's Court. Not the Led Zeppelin gig. Okay, I've mentioned it. The Led Zeppelin gig. Earl's Court. All right, there you go. I'm not going to get. That's not what this is about. Can't resist it. But I am going to mention the actual venue, Earl's Court, which was the site of big gigs for the kind of bands and artists that could attract crowds of that kind of size, because you could get between 15 and 20,000 people into an Earl's Court gig, and that was the attraction of it, its size. It was arena rock, so for bands of that kind of popularity who needed that kind of size of venue, Earl's Court was an option. But as a venue, it wasn't great. Some people may disagree. It wasn't great because it was an arena. It was an exhibition hall. You could put in car shows and, the exhibition of this, exhibition of this. It's an exhibition centre. And it probably worked for that because there was a great floor space for showing things off. But as a concert venue, it's like an aircraft hangar. It lacked atmosphere. It was kind of sterile, kind of. You were there with, I think, gig I was at was 17,000, 18,000 people, something like that. It did not feel as though there was a great crowd of people in there. It was not a great venue for concerts. It was just big, and the tube station, Earl's Court, one of the entrances to it was right there in front of it. So handy for that, I guess. But I wouldn't call it a great venue, physical venue, like the Glasgow Apollo. Not a great venue. Had its advantages for size, the Apollo for atmosphere, but these venues themselves, not great. Moving on to the Edinburgh Playhouse, the Playhouse Edinburgh. I saw Genesis there and had a great day out. I've written about it in the Chronicles Facebook page and also on the website. It was an adventure. Me and a couple of guys that I knew who got to meet the band and was invited onto the stage to talk to Mike Rutherford before the sound check. And it turned out to be a great day out. Now, the construction of the Playhouse made that possible because the stage doors opened onto the stalls area, and the equipment for the bands were taken into these stage doors, rolled down the aisles and onto the stage. And it was because of that layout that we were kind of spotted and invited to come in by Mike Rutherford and have a chat with them. And it turned out to be a brilliant day out. I'm not going to retell it again, though I'd love to, but I'm not here. It's not what the story's about. And the venue itself is a nice venue. It's not huge. I think it's a couple of thousand people, something like that. But it's very well kept, well ordered, good acoustics. Edinburgh's a festival city. It takes great pride and great care of its venues because people come there from all over the world for the Edinburgh Festival. And its venues have to be good, and the Playhouse is a very good venue. It has to be up to scratch, as opposed to the Glasgow Apollo, which kind of makes you scratch, or made you scratch. It's the difference between them. Edinburgh, up to scratch. Apollo, make you scratch. Ah, well. But we had a better atmosphere in Glasgow. There you go. So, yeah, the Edinburgh Playhouse, nice venue. Nice venue. Getting classy now. I was once at a gig at the London Palladium. This was for Donovan's 70th birthday party gig. And it was special. Not a huge venue, but it made it kind of intimate. It had an intimate feel to it. I mean, not tiny. It was not like 100 people or something. What does it hold? 1,000, 1,500? Don't know. I was in the stalls. Not huge, but intimate. And the word you'd use for the Palladium is opulent. Opulent and vintage and kind of antique. And you walk in the door and you immediately expect royalty to come gliding down the stairs or something. It is that kind of place, all kind of gilt and ornate and everything. So as a venue, it's absolutely stunning. You pay money just to walk around it for a while, never mind a gig. So yeah, the London Palladium, memorable as a venue. Gig was good as well, I might add. Shepherd's Bush Empire, small venue, used for kind of, it holds about 1,000 or something. It depends though. I've been at a couple of gigs there. Jethro Tull, about 2,000, and Steve Earle, actually also about 2,000. Now, the stalls area, the seats are removable, so it can be an open floor space, and there are 2 or 3 bars dotted around. And at both the gigs I was at, the seats were removed, if I remember rightly. At least one of them. Yeah, the Tull gig was like that. Was Steve Earle? Can't remember, but Maybe not. But I remember the tall gig. There were no seats in the stalls, so it was a standing area. But there were bars. What, 2 or 3 bars at the back, and one over here, something like that. And so it's like being at a tall gig in a big pub, which was wonderful. In a very low stage, it really was like a big pub gig. So not a huge gig, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, but intimate in that way. And yeah, nice venue. I'm going to close now. I've been to other venues as well, but I'm going to close now with the jewel in the crown, the greatest venue in the world as far as I'm concerned. The Royal Albert Hall. What can I say? It's everything. You see it on TV, and it's classical gigs and so on are held there, but so are rock gigs as well. And so you see it on TV, and you hear about it, everybody knows about it. You see it from the outside, this kind of circular construction, there's something almost religious look about it. It looks more like a kind of temple to live performance, and inside again, like the Palladium, there's an opulence that you would expect about it, and magnificent. The sound is magnificent. The staging is magnificent. The stage is magnificent. Saw the Moody Blues, 2000 again, with full orchestra. So you can buy that DVD, that gig, and it was as special as you'd imagine. And first time I went, it was about 1999 or something. I went to a classical gig, not being pretentious here. I'm not a classical music buff or any of the kind. I just have a wide musical taste. I went to Carmina Burana. It's a kind of operatic choral piece, if you're familiar with it. Everybody knows what is commonly referred to as the Old Spice advert, O Fortuna, often played at football and soccer matches and so on. Everybody knows that. Anyway, that's the opening and closing to Carmina Burana. And I saw that there, and it was my birthday, and the woman in my life at the time, not now, but she bought me a box, well, for both of us, a box, the Albert Hall. First time I'd been there, and this explosion of sound, my favourite classical piece, and coming back from the gig, I felt as though I was walking on air. Really, I was in a daze. It was so magnificent, and the venue itself played a part in how magnificent the experience was. So, the Royal Albert Hall, venue-wise, and as a gig atmosphere, easily the best. Couple to mention in dispatches. I've said that the Glasgow Apollo was lauded as the greatest gig in Britain, but the greatest gig and possibly the second greatest gig in the world. We were always told, we always understood that the greatest venue and the greatest gig in the world was New York's Madison Square Garden. So I've never been there, but I mentioned for that. Doesn't need a mention really, of course. And also, if the Glasgow Apollo had a rival in Britain as the greatest rock music gig, real rocking out gig, it was the Rainbow Theatre in London, in Finsbury Park in North London. Finsbury Park's not the most fashionable area in London, shall we say. And the Rainbow is right next to the train station. It was not as big as the Apollo. It held about 2,000, but it had the same kind of. And I was never at a gig in the Rainbow, I have to say. Other gigs in London, but not the Rainbow. But it was known as a rockers gig. much in the same way that the Glasgow Apollo was. And so that's worth a mention in dispatches as well. If anybody was at a gig at the Rainbows, please let me know about it. Madison Square Garden as well, please let me know about it. And other venues. Hammersmith, nowadays it's the Hammersmith Apollo. Back in the day, it was the Hammersmith Odeon. Been to some gigs there. Nice venue. Good acoustics and all that stuff. Another one I mentioned in dispatches. So that's the rundown of venues stroke gig. Was it a good gig? Glasgow Apollo, for example. Was it a good venue? An okay gig. So you got a kind of cross section there. Of the venues that I've mentioned, the Glasgow Apollo is demolished. Earl's Court is also demolished. It certainly no longer functions as it's redeveloped. I think largely demolished to make a kit that's the Rainbow is now a church building. There's a Christian congregation use the Rainbow for services. I think it's one of the happy, clappy, singy kind of congregations. I like that. I like there's still good music and people having a good time going on in the Rainbow, and the building is still there, so I kind of like that. Edinburgh Clay, as far as I know, it's still there. It would be needed for a festival city. I guess it's still there. London Palladium, of course, is still there. So is the Empire Shepherd's Bush. So, what are your gig memories? The best venue you were at, and the best atmosphere you were at, perhaps they're the same thing. So for now, I'll say thank you for watching, thank you for listening, leaving comments, linking. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribing is free. It doesn't cost anything. You just click subscribe. It's like linking the Facebook page. And like I say, leave comments, share, and thank you for being part of the Chronicles community. And I will see you next time.